Okay, now we're going to look at personal protective equipment. At the end of this part of the session, what we really want from you guys is for you to be able to state who is responsible for providing PPE, explain why we should use personal protective equipment in the workshop and on site, correctly choose the right PPE for various jobs in the plumbing, specifically part of the construction industry. Okay, PPE, personal protective equipment. Okay, as we already know, through the assessing of risks, we should have reduced the risk to individuals to as small a level as possible, but PPE still does have a place. It's a very, very useful last line of defence. The regulations that cover personal protective equipment are the Personal Protective Equipment at Work regulations. Hard one to remember that, eh? And these tell us that it's the responsibility of your employer to provide you with personal protective equipment free of charge. That only applies if you actually work for them directly. If you're self-employed, then they don't have the same responsibilities. If you're kind of working as a subcontractor to them, then it's your responsibility to provide them as you're kind of essentially employing yourself. Okay, but if you work directly for a company, they must by law provide you with the appropriate protective equipment for any job they ask you to carry out. They also need to make sure that you're trained, you know how to maintain it. If it becomes damaged, they must replace it, again free of charge. And yeah, it needs to be suitable. It needs to be suitable for what it's to be used for. The general sort of stuff that you might wear on a building site: steel toe cap boots, keep your feet safe. Might also have a sort of steel plate on the midsole, just about here. But yeah, certainly as a minimum, steel toe caps. High visibility jacket, again, like we mentioned in the risk assessment video, about protecting you to make you visible to industrial vehicles, make you less likely to be run over, essentially. And also more visible to other people as it gets to sort of evening time in the winter. You know, it can get really dark. It just helps to keep people visible. And the hard hat. Hard hat is an essential bit of kit on a building site. You know, your head is, whilst your skull is generally quite a strong part of your body, if your brain does get damaged, there's a serious sort of repercussions from that. So we always wear a hard hat on a building site. Okay. We'd use other PPE in various situations. I mean, the example that we see here, there's a gentleman here, looks like he's doing some sort of, I'll move this for a second so I'll hide this. He's doing some drilling, it looks like, and he's, as well as his regular PPE, his high vis vest, his hard hat, he'll be wearing safety boots as well, we just can't see them. He's also got a visor to protect his eyes and his face from anything being kicked back. He's got ear defenders. If the loud noises, your ears are vulnerable. Anything over 80 decibels for an extended period of time, your ears are at risk. And it's actually by law, anything above 85 decibels, you should wear ear protection for. You can also see he's wearing gloves, help to protect his hands, and padded trousers. Obviously in the workshop, when you guys are in there, you will be wearing steel toe cap boots, but you'll have to provide yourself. Obviously the college doesn't employ you, so you've got the responsibility of providing that for yourselves. And overalls, again, should to be provided by you guys. What we will provide though is barrier cream. We may also provide gloves as well for certain tasks, leather gloves. But maybe if you're working on steel pipe, you can request leather gloves, because it can be a bit sort of tough on the hands, you know. Barrier cream, we should have at the hygiene stations some barrier cream on there to help sort of give you a sort of protective barrier, to prevent any oils or whatever kind of potentially causing harm. There's other situations where we might wear other PPE. For example, when you're soldering, you should wear goggles. You might choose to wear gloves as well. That's up to you, but it's not essential. When you're drilling, because you will have tasks where you're drilling, you need to wear your goggles. You need to wear ear defenders, and a dust mask. The gloves again if you choose. So yeah, we'd wear goggles anytime there's a chance of flying debris kind of causing damage to them, and a couple of examples of that would be drilling, like we talked about previously, but also if you use a chisel with a mushroomed head. And you can see this picture just here. If you get a cold chisel, you hit it, which is like one of these big metal chisels, excuse me. If you hit it regularly over many years, eventually the head starts to squash down and turn over, like you can see in this picture here, and that's what we call a mushroomed head, and there's a chance of steel splinters flying from that. So if you do ever use a chisel with a mushroomed head, you should wear eye protection, or if you're using a cold chisel at all, really, it's a good idea to wear eye protection. Oh, yeah, using a power drill like we talked about. Okay. If you work on underground drainage, you really want to make sure you stop that water coming into contact with your body at all, you know. And sort of, as well as the hygiene reasons, which are sort of fairly obvious, working on underground drainage systems, there's also a real risk of something called Weil's disease, or osteoporosis, which can be fatal. So to make sure that you're safe, make sure that you use waterproof gloves or gauntlets. Gauntlets are long gloves, to protect yourself from this. When you work with lead, you also need to use appropriate PPE. There's a few things we need to know about lead. Obviously, it's very, very heavy, but also, probably more importantly, it's poisonous. It can lay itself down in your blood, in your bones, and it takes a very, very long time for your body to be able to process it, to work it through. And if you work with it regularly, you can end up with a build-up of lead, which can end up sort of causing a lot of physical and mental issues as well. You know, it can sort of damages the brain as well as damaging the body and the liver. And the lead can get into your body in various different ways. You can breathe it in. If you breathe in the fumes when you've been lead welding or close to someone who's been lead welding, it's part of the reason why they took lead out of car fuel, you know, because sort of people were breathing in the burnt lead fumes, and it was causing the lead levels to rise. And it can also get in through your skin, essentially through cuts and nicks in that you might have in your hands. Even tiny little cuts and nicks could lead to sort of lead getting into your bloodstream and building up and potentially causing you harm. And so how we can protect ourselves from that, I mean, is when we do lead welding, make sure that you do so in a very well ventilated area. If you work lead welding indoors, you might use a local exhaust ventilation system. If you do lead welding anywhere, you should also make sure you wear goggles, because sometimes the lead can spit, and so if you really want to avoid it going in your eyes. And you'd also wear barrier cream. If you work in a loud environment, you'd wear ear defenders, and that's anything over 80 decibels. The ear defenders should be made available if you request them. If it's over 85 decibels, which isn't really all that loud, it's the equivalent of someone standing, if somebody was standing 2 metres away from you and you couldn't hear them clearly, then there's a good chance that this noise level is above 85 decibels. In a loft, because there's fiberglass insulation in a loft, fiberglass is an irritant. It's also potentially a carcinogen. It's known as a class 2 carcinogen, which means that there's some belief that it potentially could be a carcinogen. So you need to make sure that you don't breathe in the fibres, and you do that by wearing a dust mask, but also you stop it coming into contact with your skin, which would irritate your skin, by wearing gloves, by wearing overalls. Cartridge tools. So cartridge tools, they essentially work using gunpowder. They literally use gunpowder to cause an explosion, forces a fixing into concrete, and in some cases it can even force the fixing into metal. It can be very, very powerful. It is very, very powerful, and it can be very, very dangerous if you don't use it correctly. So you should only ever use a cartridge tool if you've been trained and you're competent to do so. Because of the hazards of using cartridge tools, you need to wear extra PPE. So alongside your normal overalls, high-vis hard hat, you'd also, it would be sensible to wear gloves, definitely wear goggles, and because it's very, very loud, we'd wear also ear defenders. The strength of the cartridge actually varies by colour, and you can see these here. And now we've got another task to do.